My name is Emma Thompson, 31 years old. I was released a day early from the hospital. When I got home, I saw my husband and my maid of honor in our matrimonial bed, but instead of confronting them, I smiled and left without a word. But then something happened that no one expected. 3 days later, my husband's face went gray. The house key trembled between my fingers as I stood on the front porch, 3 days post-surgery, and 1 day ahead of schedule. My gallbladder had been more cooperative than the doctors expected, but right now, all I wanted was to collapse into my own bed and forget about hospital gowns and 4 drips. The afternoon sun felt warm against my face as I slowly turned the key, careful not to strain my healing incisions. The door creaked open, and immediately something felt wrong. The air carried a scent that didn't belong, expensive perfume, floral and heavy, nothing like the lavender candles I always burned. From upstairs came the unmistakable sound of movement, followed by a woman's soft laughter that made my blood turn cold. I stood frozen in my own entryway, hospital discharge bag still clutched in my hand, as one terrible realization began to dawn. What I saw next would change everything I thought I knew about the 2 people I trusted most. My legs moved without conscious thought, carrying me up the stairs I'd climbed 1,000 times before. Each step sent a dull ache through my surgical sites, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the ice spreading through my chest. The sounds grew clearer, whispered words I couldn't quite make out, the rustle of sheets, the rhythmic creaking of our bed frame. Our bedroom door stood slightly ajar, the same door we painted together during our first week as newlyweds just 3 months ago. Through the gap, I could see movement, shadows dancing against the wall in a rhythm that belonged to intimate moments, private moments that should have been mine alone. I pushed the door open wider. Time stopped. The world tilted sideways. My hospital bag hit the floor with a soft thud that somehow sounded deafening in the sudden silence of my collapsing universe. There, in the bed we'd chosen together at that little furniture store downtown, was my husband David. But he wasn't alone. Beneath him, her auburn hair spread across my pillow like liquid fire, was Alexis, my maid of honor, my best friend since college, the woman who'd helped me pick out my wedding dress, who'd held my bouquet during the ceremony, who'd given the most beautiful toast about eternal friendship and unbreakable bonds. She was wearing the ivory silk negligee I'd bought for our honeymoon in Tuscany, the one I'd never had the courage to wear because it felt too revealing, too vulnerable. On her, it looked confident, seductive, perfect. Everything I wasn't. "You feel so good, baby," David whispered, his voice thick with pleasure, using the same pet name he whispered to me in the dark. I've been thinking about this all week. My knees buckled. I gripped the doorframe, watching my husband's hands roam over my best friend's body with the kind of desperate hunger I hadn't seen from him in months. They moved together like they'd done this before, many times, with a familiarity that spoke of practiced intimacy and shared secrets. Neither of them noticed me standing there, a ghost in my own home, watching my marriage and my friendship disintegrate in real time. The wedding photo on our nightstand seemed to mock me, David and me, radiant and hopeful, surrounded by our wedding party with Alexis beaming beside us in her bridesmaid's dress. I should have screamed. I should have thrown something, demanded explanations, collapsed into hysterical sobs. Every fiber of my being wanted to explode, to make them feel even a fraction of the devastation coursing through me. But instead, I found myself backing away from the doorway on silent feet, my body moving with a strange, disconnected calm that surprised me. I retrieved my hospital bag from the floor, my movements mechanical and precise, like a robot following programming. Down the stairs, through the living room where our wedding photos smiled down from every surface, past the kitchen where we'd shared breakfast just 4 days ago before my surgery. The front door closed behind me with a soft click that felt like the end of everything. I walked to the porch swing, a wedding gift from my grandmother that still carried her handwritten note. For quiet moments of reflection in your new life together. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. I sat down heavily, the chains creaking under my weight, and stared across the street where Mrs. Patterson was watering her roses and Mr. Rogers was washing his car. Normal life, continuing, while mine shattered into irreparable pieces. 3 months, I whispered to no one. We'd been married 3 months. The tears that should have come never arrived. Instead, something else settled over me, a crystalline clarity that felt foreign and dangerous. I thought of my grandmother's voice, her favorite piece of advice delivered over countless cups of tea. Information is power, sweetheart. Never make a move until you know exactly what you're dealing with. Alexis's car wasn't in the driveway. She'd parked around the corner, trying to be discreet. But not discreet enough. I sat on that swing for exactly 17 minutes, watching my neighbors live their uncomplicated lives while my world reorganized itself around this new, terrible reality. When the tears finally threatened to come, I forced them back. Crying was what the old me would have done. The trusting, naive woman who'd walked into that house 20 minutes ago. That woman was gone. In her place sat someone harder, sharper, infinitely more dangerous. Someone who remembered that my grandmother hadn't just given me platitudes about information and power. She'd also left me $4 million in inheritance that David had been pressuring me to put into our joint investment account for better growth opportunities. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app, starting a list. Names, dates, inconsistencies I dismissed as innocent. Alexis's sudden business success with her consulting firm. David's late nights at the office. The way they'd both been so eager to help plan our honeymoon while we were still engaged. I was going to find out everything before I destroyed them both. Exactly 47 minutes later, I composed myself and entered through the front door as quietly as I'd left, setting my hospital bag in the foyer and arranging myself in the kitchen. Alexis had since left, and I heard the shower turned off upstairs, which meant David was about leaving the shower. I poured 2 glasses of his favorite bourbon with hands that barely trembled. "Emma!" David's voice called from the bedroom, surprise evident. "Baby, what are you doing at home? I thought they were keeping you until tomorrow." "They discharged me early," I called back, my voice carrying just the right note of pleasant surprise rather than calculated performance. "Clean bill of health. I wanted to surprise you." David emerged from the hallway in his bathrobe, hair still damp from his shower, looking genuinely shocked to see me. His eyes darted toward the stairs for just a fraction of a second, checking to make sure no evidence remained of his afternoon activities. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." His kiss felt like betrayal against my lips, tasting of lies and another woman's perfume. "How are you feeling? Any pain?" "Much better. Actually, I was thinking we could have a quiet evening together. Order some Thai food. Maybe watch that documentary you mentioned." I settled beside him on the couch we'd picked out together, playing the role of devoted wife with what felt like supernatural calm. My phone rang. Alexis. David's entire body went rigid. "Hey, Lex," I answered, watching my husband's face carefully. "Just got home from the hospital." "Emma. Oh my God. I was just thinking about you. How are you feeling?" Her voice carried the same warm concern it always had, but now I could hear the performance in it, the careful modulation designed to hide guilt. "I'm doing great. Thanks to this amazing husband of mine taking such good care of me." David's smile looked strained around the edges. "What have you been up to?" "Business keeping you busy. You know how it is. Client meetings, proposals. Actually, I should let you rest. Too eager to end the call. Too quick to escape." "I'm going to take a dump," David announced after dinner that night, his movements still carrying that subtle tension I'd learned to recognize. "Maybe we can watch that documentary afterward." The moment I heard the bathroom door close, I was moving. His laptop sat open on the kitchen counter where he'd left it after checking work emails, the same laptop he'd suddenly become protective about over the past few months. The password screen mocked me with its blinking cursor. I tried our wedding date first. Invalid. My birthday. Invalid. His birthday, our anniversary, even our address. Nothing worked. Then, with a sinking feeling that felt like falling through ice, I typed, "Lexi forever." I had heard him shout it once, when he was cheering Alexis after she closed a new client. The desktop loaded instantly. I sat staring at his home screen, my hands trembling as the implications crashed over me. Not just Lexi. Lexi forever. Like a promise. Like a declaration. Like the password of a man planning a future with someone who wasn't his wife. My cursor hovered over the property's menu, showing me details I almost didn't want to see. The password was created 3 days after our wedding. 3 days after he'd promised to love and cherish me until death do us part. How long had he been planning this? Had he been thinking about her while sliding the ring onto my finger? While we danced to At Last at our reception, had he already been counting down the days until he could be with her instead? The shower was still running. I had maybe 10 more minutes. David's browsing history unfolded like a roadmap to betrayal, each search more devastating than the last. I screenshotted everything, my phone's camera capturing evidence with silent efficiency. Real estate searches dominated the recent activity. Luxury condos, Atlanta young professionals, 2-bedroom apartments, Buckhead furnished, downtown lofts, modern amenities. Properties way above what David could afford on his financial advisor's salary, all searched within the past month. But it was the legal searches that made my blood turn to ice. Georgia Divorce Law Property Division. How alimony calculated Georgia. Spouse entitled inherited money divorce. Commingling inheritance joint account legal implications. Quickest divorce process Georgia grounds. Every search felt like a physical blow. He wasn't just cheating. He was strategically planning our divorce while lying to my face about loving me, about wanting to build a future together. The timeline made it worse. I scrolled back through weeks of searches, and there it was, the pattern that revealed everything. July 2nd. Spouse rights to inheritance after divorce. July 2nd was exactly 2 weeks after grandmother's will reading, when we'd learned about the $4 million she'd left me. 2 weeks. He'd given our marriage exactly 2 weeks after learning about my inheritance before he'd started researching how to steal it. More searches revealed his strategy. Joint investment account tax benefits. Commingled inheritance becomes marital property. Financial advisor access to spouse accounts legal. He'd been studying Georgia's marriage laws like they were an enemy fortress, looking for every weakness, every loophole that would let him claim what wasn't his. I found saved articles about famous divorce cases, highlighted sections about inheritance protection, bookmarked pages about asset hiding. This wasn't impulse. This was methodical, calculated theft disguised as marriage. But the most damning evidence came in his saved searches folder. How long married before entitled to alimony Georgia, saved June 20th, 5 days after our wedding. He'd never intended our marriage to last. I'd been a mark from the beginning, a $4 million target he'd seduced and married with divorce papers already drafted in his mind. Every "I love you," every romantic gesture, every moment I'd believed we were building something real had been performance art designed to separate me from grandmother's money. The water turned off upstairs. Footsteps across our bedroom floor. I closed the browser and stepped away from the laptop, my mind racing with implications that went far deeper than simple adultery. Suddenly, every conversation we'd had about money since the inheritance took on a sinister new meaning. I could see it all clearly now. David's patient, persistent campaign to get his hands on grandmother's money. We're married now. Keeping money separate feels so formal, so distant, he'd said over breakfast just 2 weeks ago. Don't you think we should be building everything together? I'd felt guilty for hesitating, for that nagging voice in my head that whispered caution. He'd been so understanding about my reluctance, so supportive of my emotional attachment to keeping the money separate. I get it, baby. It's not about trust, it's about honoring your grandmother's memory. But think about the growth potential, my investment background, your capital. We could turn $4 million into $8 million in 5 years. How he must have laughed at my gullibility. How he must have celebrated every time I wavered, every moment I'd considered his perfectly reasonable arguments about joint financial planning and marital unity. The most chilling part was how good he'd been at it. Never pushy, never demanding. Just patient, loving persistence designed to wear down my resistance until I voluntarily handed over the key to my financial future. But something had held me back. Some instinct I couldn't name had kept me from signing those account transfer papers, sitting in his desk drawer upstairs. Grandmother's voice, maybe, whispering warnings about trusting too easily, moving too fast. Information is power, sweetheart, but intuition is survival. Thank God I'd listened to that voice. Thank God some part of me had been smart enough to wait, to hesitate, to trust my gut even when my heart wanted to believe in the man I'd married. David appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair damp from his shower, looking like the devoted husband he'd never been. Ready for that documentary? While David loaded Netflix, I excused myself to check on some work emails and began researching Alexis's miracle business success. Her consulting firm, Strategic Solutions LLC, had launched 4 months ago according to the Georgia Secretary of State database, right around the time she'd started acting strange about her sudden financial windfall. Her LinkedIn profile was impressive. 3 Fortune 500 clients in 4 months, specialized expertise in market expansion and growth strategies. For someone whose previous experience was managing a coffee shop, her rapid success defied explanation. But as I dug deeper, patterns emerged that made everything click into place. Strategic Solutions client list read like David's professional network, Henderson Manufacturing, Coastal Insurance Group, Peachtree Development, all companies David had worked with through his financial planning firm. The connection was obvious now. David had been feeding Alexis's clients, using his established relationships and inside knowledge to fast-track her business, while she played the role of brilliant consultant. His network had become her foundation, his reputation her launching pad. But even with David's help, the numbers didn't add up. Alexis was driving a brand-new BMW, wearing designer clothes, living in a luxury apartment downtown. Consulting fees, even generous ones, wouldn't cover that lifestyle, not for a startup firm with overhead costs and business expenses. There had to be another source of income. Another angle I wasn't seeing yet. As David settled beside me on the couch, remote in hand, one question burned in my mind. If the affair and the business connection weren't enough to fund Alexis's new lifestyle, where was the rest of the money coming from? The mystery was deeper than simple betrayal. Much deeper. 3 days of perfect wife performance had nearly broken me. Cooking David's favorite meals, asking about his day, pretending to believe his lies about working late. But every smile I forced, every kiss I endured, was building toward this moment. Thursday afternoon, I parked across from Strategic Solutions office building, my grandmother's old Toyota Camry invisible among the downtown traffic. Alexis emerged at exactly 1:30 p.m., her red hair catching the sunlight as she walked to her BMW with the confidence of a woman who believed she was untouchable. I followed her through Atlanta's maze of streets, staying 3 cars back like I'd seen in movies. She wasn't going to another client meeting. The restaurant she pulled into, Le Bernardin, was the kind of place where dinner for 2 cost more than most people's rent. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched Alexis navigate between tables like she owned the place. She wasn't meeting another client. She was meeting a man. He stood when she approached, silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of confident bearing that came with serious money. Definitely not David. This man was older, distinguished, probably in his late 50s. And the way he looked at Alexis, the way his hand lingered on her lower back as he guided her to their secluded corner table, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't business. This was personal. I snapped photos through the window, my phone's camera capturing every detail. The way he leaned in when she spoke. How she touched his arm and laughed at something he whispered. The small wrapped box he slid across the table, and her delighted reaction when she opened it to reveal what looked like diamond earrings. My hands trembled as I zoomed in, capturing the intimate moment when he fastened the earrings himself, his fingers gentle against her neck. This was where the money was coming from. Not just David's connections or consulting fees, but this, whatever this was. Alexis wasn't just having an affair with my husband. She was running multiple relationships simultaneously, collecting wealthy men like trophies. The BMW, the designer clothes, the luxury apartment downtown that I'd always wondered how she afforded, it all made sense now. But as I watched them together, something else became clear. This wasn't just about money. The way she looked at this man, the genuine warmth in her smile, suggested something deeper. Something that made my stomach clench with a realization I wasn't ready to face. What if David wasn't her primary target? What if he was just the side hustle while she focused on bigger game? The question that burned through me as I sat in that parking lot, camera in hand, was simple. How many other men were there? And how deep did this conspiracy go? The license plate search cost me $50 through a private database, but it was worth every penny. Richard Jonathan Blackwood, age 58, registered owner of a 2023 Mercedes S-Class. CEO and founder of Blackwood Properties, one of Atlanta's largest commercial real estate firms. I spent the next 2 hours in a coffee shop across from the restaurant, diving deep into Richard Blackwood's digital footprint while Alexis and her sugar daddy enjoyed their 3-hour lunch. His company website painted the picture of a successful empire, 37 commercial properties across the Southeast, annual revenue in the hundreds of millions, 3 generations of family business. But it was his personal social media that revealed the stakes. Facebook photos showed a life that screamed old Southern money, sprawling estate in Buckhead, charity galas, family vacations to European castles. His wife Margaret was elegant in that way wealthy women perfected, and their twin daughters had graduated from Duke and Emory respectively. The family photos told a story of generational wealth and social status. This wasn't new money trying to prove itself. This was an established, unshakable fortune built over decades. Subsequent profiles tracked his rise to become one of Atlanta's most influential business leaders. Current net worth estimates range from $50 to $70 million. $50 million. That number sat in my chest like a stone. David's financial advisor's salary was comfortable, but Richard Blackwood operated in an entirely different universe. If Alexis was targeting him as her primary source of income, then David was small change in comparison. I cross-referenced their social circles through mutual LinkedIn connections and charity event photos. They didn't move in the same worlds. Richard's sphere was country clubs and corporate boards, while David's was middle-class professional networking. So how had they met? The answer came through Alexis's Instagram, buried in photos from 6 months ago. A real estate development conference downtown, the kind of industry event where ambitious consultants mingled with established moguls. There was Alexis in a cocktail dress that probably cost more than my car payment, posed with a group that included several men in expensive suits. Richard Blackwood was in the background of that photo, not part of the main group, but visible enough for someone to have made an introduction. That's when the pattern clicked into focus. Maybe Alexis wasn't randomly collecting wealthy men. Maybe she was strategically targeting them through professional events, using her legitimate consulting business as cover to infiltrate circles far above her actual social status. The sophistication was breathtaking and terrifying. This wasn't some desperate woman trading intimacy for shopping money. This was calculated, professional-level manipulation designed to extract maximum financial benefit from multiple high-value targets simultaneously. But the most chilling realization hit me as I sat in that coffee shop, scrolling through months of carefully curated social media posts. If Alexis was this methodical about targeting Richard Blackwood, then her relationship with David wasn't accidental either. She'd chosen us both for specific reasons, and I was about to find out what those reasons were. I called Sarah from the parking garage outside Richard Blackwood's office building, my hand still shaking from what I discovered. My twin sister answered on the second ring, her corporate lawyer voice immediately shifting to concern when she heard my tone. "Emma, what's wrong? You sound—" "Sarah, I need you to sit down. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane, but I need you to listen to everything before you say anything." Silence on the other end, then. "Okay, I'm sitting. Talk to me." I told her everything. The hospital discovery, David's password, the inheritance research, Alexis's mysterious income sources, and now Richard Blackwood. With each revelation, I could hear Sarah's breathing change from concern to disbelief to cold, calculating fury. "That manipulative bitch," Sarah finally said, her usually professional composure cracking. "Emma, this isn't just adultery. This is organized financial fraud. Alexis is running a long-term con operation, and David is her inside man at the financial planning firm." "It gets worse," I said, then explained David's research into divorce law and inheritance commingling. He's been planning to steal grandmother's money from the beginning and run off with Alexis. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. When Sarah spoke again, her voice carried the steel that made her one of Atlanta's most feared corporate attorneys. "We're going to destroy them. Both of them. Completely." "Sarah." "No, Emma. They targeted the wrong family. Do you know what we have between us? You got $4 million in inheritance and an inside view of David's operation. I've got 15 years of experience in financial crime litigation and every database subscription known to the legal profession." She paused, and I could practically hear her mind working through possibilities. "We're breaking into David's office tonight. I want to see every file, every client record, every piece of evidence of what they've been doing. Because I guarantee you, this goes deeper than just your husband and your so-called best friend." The alliance was formed. Griffin Financial Planning occupied the third floor of a modest office building in Midtown, the kind of place that screamed trustworthy local business to potential clients. At 11 p.m. on a Thursday night, the parking lot was empty except for a security guard's car making rounds every 2 hours. Sarah had come prepared with the kind of tools that made me question what exactly they taught in corporate law school. "Client gave me these for a case involving industrial espionage," she explained, pulling lock picks from her purse like they were business cards. "Never thought I'd use them to investigate my own brother-in-law." Sarah had the first lock picked in under 3 minutes. "Jesus Christ," she whispered, pulling out the first batch of files. "Emma, look at this." The client folders revealed a systematic pattern of theft spanning 8 months. Small amounts skimmed from retirement accounts, usually elderly clients who wouldn't notice minor discrepancies in their quarterly statements. David had been careful, never more than a few thousand from any single account, spread across dozens of victims to avoid detection. But it was the secondary set of books that revealed the true scope. Sarah's forensic accounting background kicked in as she photographed page after page of hidden transactions. "Shell companies," she explained, pointing to a series of transfers. "He's moving stolen money through at least 4 different fake businesses before it ends up in accounts linked to Alexis's consulting firm. This is money laundering on a professional scale." The amounts were staggering. Mrs. Henderson from Buckhead, $127,000 stolen over 6 months. The Patel family's college fund, $89,000 redirected to fake investment opportunities. Mr. Williams, recently widowed, $156,000 from his wife's life insurance settlement. $800,000, Sarah said, her voice barely audible. "Emma, your husband has stolen over $800,000 from people who trusted him with their life savings." But the most damning evidence was in David's computer files, protected by passwords that Sarah's legal software cracked in minutes. Email chains between David and Alexis showed the embezzlement wasn't his idea, it was hers. "Need $50,000 for new client presentation materials. Can you access the Morrison account?" Alexis, 3 months ago. Henderson's account shows $200,000 available. She won't review statements until December. David's response: "Perfect. Wired to Strategic Solutions, account number 3. Love you." Alexis. The casual tone was sickening. They were discussing stolen retirement money like it was their personal ATM, ruining lives with the emotional detachment of people ordering coffee. Sarah found contracts for luxury apartment leases, BMW payments, designer shopping receipts, all funded by elderly clients' stolen savings. Alexis hadn't just been living beyond her means, she'd been living off other people's futures. "Emma," Sarah said, her voice carrying a weight I'd never heard before. "We're not just dealing with adultery and divorce fraud. This is organized financial elder abuse. These people could go to prison for decades. The scope was bigger than my broken marriage. It was bigger than my broken friendship. This was about justice for victims who didn't even know they'd been victimized yet." The deepest files in David's computer revealed a truth that made everything else look like amateur hour. Sarah's corporate investigation software had cracked through layers of encrypted folders, revealing communications that painted a picture of organized crime. "What will you do?" Sarah asked. I thought for a moment and replied, "I have a plan. I'm paying Mr. Blackwood a meeting." Richard Blackwood's personal cell phone number took me 3 hours to find, buried in a property development contract Sarah had accessed through her legal databases. At exactly 9 a.m. on Friday morning, I dialed from a burner phone I'd bought with cash. He answered on the 4th ring. "Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood, we need to talk about Alexis." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, who is this?" "Someone who has photographs of you and your girlfriend at Le Bernardin yesterday, and the Ritz-Carlton last Thursday. Should I continue?" The pause stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. "What do you want?" Face-to-face conversation. "Today, 2 o'clock at the Starbucks on 5th Street, the one across from Piedmont Park." "I don't think." "Mr. Blackwood," I interrupted, letting steel creep into my voice. "I have high-resolution photos of you fastening diamond earrings on a woman who isn't your wife. I have records of the $200,000 you've transferred to her accounts over the past 6 months. And I have enough evidence to prove that the woman you're in love with is a professional con artist who's simultaneously running the same scam on multiple victims. His breathing grew audible through the phone. Margaret and your daughters deserve to know what kind of man they're married to and calling father, don't they? The photos should make for interesting conversation at Sunday dinner. Jesus Christ, he whispered. What do you want from me? I want 30 minutes of your time. Show up alone, or the first person I call is your wife. The second call goes to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's investigative reporter who's been following romance scam networks. You're serious. Dead serious. 2 p.m., Mr. Blackwood. Don't make me wait. I hung up before he could respond, my hands trembling with adrenaline. The hook was set. Now I just had to reel him in carefully enough that he became an ally instead of an enemy. The most dangerous part of any plan wasn't the execution. It was getting powerful people to believe they had more to gain from cooperation than from destruction. Richard Blackwood looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect silver hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of stress eating away at him from the inside. He spotted me immediately when he walked into the Starbucks. I was the only woman sitting alone with a manila folder, exactly as I described. He approached my corner table like he was walking to his execution. You must be the mystery caller, he said, sliding into the chair across from me. Up close, I could see why Alexis had targeted him. Even exhausted and terrified, he carried himself with the confidence of old money and established power. Thank you for coming, Mr. Blackwood. I know this isn't easy. Cut the pleasantries. What do you want? I slid the folder across the table. I want to show you who Alexis really is. His hand shook slightly as he opened it. The first photo was from yesterday's lunch, him and Alexis in their intimate corner booth, his fingers gentle on her neck as he fastened the earrings. His face went ashen. How did you? Keep looking. The next photos were from the office break-in. Alexis's real criminal background, the international network communications, the portfolio management spreadsheet with his name listed as ATL, primary $2M potential. Richard stared at the documents for a full minute, his breathing growing more labored with each page. When he finally looked up, his eyes were hollow. $2 million, he said quietly. She had me pegged for $2 million. How much have you given her so far? 200,000. Maybe more. He laughed bitterly. Jesus, I thought I was being generous. Turns out I was just following her business plan. Mr. Blackwood, I need you to understand something. Alexis isn't just a gold digger or an opportunist. She's part of an organized criminal network that targets wealthy men across multiple states. You're not her only victim. You're one of at least 12 that we've identified. His face cycled through emotions: shock, betrayal, rage, and finally something that looked like respect. Who are you? How do you know all this? I'm the wife of one of her other targets. My husband has been embezzling money from his elderly clients to fund her operation. She's been playing us against each other while stealing from both. Richard leaned back in his chair, processing the implications. She told me she loved me. She told my husband the same thing. Probably told all of them the same thing. It's what professional con artists do. They make you feel special while they're robbing you blind. What do you want from me? I leaned forward, meeting his eyes directly. I want to destroy her. Completely. But I need help from someone with your resources and connections. Why should I help you? Why not just walk away and cut my losses? Because she's not going to stop, Mr. Blackwood. She's got exit strategies planned, offshore accounts ready, fake identities prepared. If we don't stop her now, she disappears with everything she's stolen and starts over in another city with new victims. Richard was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. She made one mistake, he finally said. What's that? She chose victims who fought back. The alliance was sealed. I called David from the parking lot outside Starbucks, my voice carefully modulated to sound like the loving wife he expected. Emma, is everything okay? You sound strange. I'm fine. Actually, I was hoping you could come home early today. We need to talk about something important. What kind of something? You're worrying me. Perfect. A little anxiety would make him more malleable when he arrived. It's about our future, David. About the inheritance money and some decisions we need to make. I could practically hear his ears perk up through the phone. This was what he'd been waiting for. My final surrender of grandmother's $4 million to his expert financial management. Of course, baby. I can be there in an hour. Is everything all right with the account transfers? We'll discuss it when you get home. Oh, and David? Clear evening. This might take a while. Sure, absolutely. Should I pick up dinner? Don't worry about dinner. I have everything we need. I hung up and drove home with the satisfaction of a chess player who could see checkmate 12 moves ahead. David thought he was coming home to claim his prize. Instead, he was walking into the most devastating conversation of his life. Sarah was already at the house when I arrived, her BMW parked in the garage where neighbors couldn't see it. She'd spent the morning organizing our evidence into devastating presentations, financial documents, photographs, criminal records, email printouts, all arranged in chronological order to tell the story of David and Alexis's crimes. How did it go with Blackwood? She asked, helping me arrange documents across the dining room table. Better than expected. He's hurt, angry, and ready for revenge. Plus, he's got resources we can use. Good. Because I found something else while you were gone. Sarah handed me a printout that made my blood run cold. David's been researching quick divorce procedures in the Bahamas. He's planning to serve you papers while you're still recovering from surgery, claim the inheritance as marital property, and disappear with Alexis before you can fight it. The timeline was worse than I'd imagined. They weren't planning to wait months or even weeks. They were planning to destroy my life within days. He has no idea what's waiting for him, I said, looking at our evidence spread across the table like instruments of war. Sarah smiled grimly. None whatsoever. David walked through the front door at 4:50 p.m. with flowers and a bottle of wine, looking like a man who believed victory was within reach. His smile faltered when he saw the dining room table covered in documents, but he recovered quickly. Emma, what's all this? Are you finally ready to discuss the investment options? Sit down, David. Something in my tone made him hesitate. Baby, you're scaring me a little. What's going on? Sit down. He sat across from me, his eyes darting over the papers spread between us. I watched the exact moment recognition dawned, when his face went from confusion to panic to desperate calculation. I know about Alexis, I said simply. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. I know about the embezzlement. I know about the offshore accounts. I know about your research into Bahamian divorce law. I know about the $2 million you and Alexis were planning to steal from me. Emma, I can explain. No, you can't. I slid the first photograph across the table, him and Alexis in our bed, taken through the slightly open door. This is from the day I came home early from the hospital. David stared at the photo like it was a poisonous snake. How did you? I've been watching you for a week, David. Both of you. I know about Richard Blackwood. I know about the international romance scam network. I know about the elderly clients whose retirement money you've been stealing to fund your girlfriend's criminal operation. Each revelation hit him like a physical blow. By the time I finished, he was slumped in his chair, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. What do you want? He whispered. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes with the cold satisfaction of complete victory. I want to give you a choice. 2 options, both of which end with our marriage being over, but only one of which keeps you out of federal prison. I'm listening. Option 1. Tomorrow morning, you walk into the FBI field office downtown and confess everything. The embezzlement, the money laundering, Alexis's criminal network, all of it. You cooperate fully, help them recover the stolen funds, and face whatever consequences come with that decision. David's face went gray. And option 2? Option 2. You stick with your original plan. Run away with your criminal girlfriend, start a new life with stolen money, and hope the FBI never catches up with you. Why would you give me that choice? Why not just turn me in? I smiled, and something in my expression made him flinch. Because option 2 isn't really an option, David. See, while you were at work today, I had lunch with Richard Blackwood. You what? He knows everything. About Alexis, about you, about the 12 other victims across 4 states. He's not the kind of man who forgives being made a fool of, especially not by criminals who targeted his family's reputation. David's hands started trembling. Emma, what did you do? I gave him the same choice I'm giving you. Work with me to destroy Alexis's operation, or face the consequences alone. Guess which option he chose? This is insane. You can't. I already did. Oh, and David? Remember those joint accounts you were planning to drain? And my inheritance money? I slid a bank statement across the table. I emptied them yesterday. Every penny is now in accounts you'll never access. David stared at the zero balance like it was his death sentence. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to decide, David. FBI confession, or life on the run with a woman who's already choosing between you and a wealthier target. Either way, you're out of my life forever. Alexis loves me, he said desperately. We're going to build something real together. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Call her right now. Tell her Richard Blackwood cut off her funding and the FBI is investigating her network. See how much she loves you when the money runs out. David pulled out his phone with shaking hands, but we both knew he wouldn't make that call. Because deep down, he already knew the truth. When criminals got caught, they didn't stand together. They ran to save themselves, and Alexis was already running. David didn't sleep that night. I could hear him pacing upstairs, his footsteps a desperate rhythm across our bedroom floor, the same bedroom where I discovered his betrayal exactly 8 days ago. At 6:47 a.m., he appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking like a broken man. I'll do it, he whispered. I'll turn myself in. The relief in his voice was almost pathetic. After hours of agonizing over his impossible choice, he'd finally accepted the truth. There was no running from this. No escape plan that didn't end in federal prison, or worse. Smart decision, I said, not looking up from my coffee. Agent Victoria Martinez from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is expecting your call at 9 a.m. David's head snapped up. You already? How did you? Victoria is my twin sister's law school roommate. She's been tracking romance scam networks for 3 years. When I showed her your evidence, she nearly jumped through the phone with excitement. The irony was devastating. David had spent months researching how to steal my inheritance, never realizing that my family connections could destroy him faster than any legal loophole could save him. Emma, I need you to know, I never meant for it to go this far. Alexis, she made it sound so simple at first. Just small amounts, clients who wouldn't notice. Stop. I finally looked at him, and something in my expression made him flinch. You don't get to play victim now. Mrs. Henderson is 83 years old, David. Mr. Williams just lost his wife of 47 years. You stole their futures to buy your girlfriend designer handbags. His face crumpled. She said she loved me. She said we were going to build something real together. Did you call her last night? After our conversation. David's silence was answer enough. Let me guess, straight to voicemail. No callback. No explanation. I stood up, carrying my mug to the sink. That's what professionals do when operations go bad. They disappear. But she said what criminals always say to their marks, David. Whatever keeps the money flowing. I turned back to face him. You were never her partner. You were her employee. And now that the FBI is involved, you're her liability. The truth hit him like a physical blow. For 8 months, he believed he was the mastermind. Now he was discovering he'd been the disposable tool all along. Agent Martinez was going to love this confession. Richard Blackwood moved faster than I'd expected. Within hours of our coffee shop alliance, he'd implemented a strategy that would have impressed military tacticians. I told her the family business was under federal audit, he explained during our second meeting, this time at his downtown office. All personal expenditures suspended pending review. Her reaction was illuminating. How illuminating! She went from loving girlfriend to ice-cold businesswoman in about 30 seconds. Started asking specific questions about timeline, asset protection, offshore options. His laugh was bitter. She wasn't worried about me or our relationship. She was calculating her exit strategy. Perfect! Alexis was showing her true nature, just as we'd predicted. But Richard's financial cutoff was only the beginning. The real psychological warfare started when I began feeding Alexis carefully crafted misinformation about David's situation. He's talking to lawyers, I told her during a phone call, my voice carefully modulated to sound like a concerned wife seeking advice from her best friend. Something about plea agreements and cooperation with authorities. I don't understand all the legal terminology, but he seems terrified. What kind of cooperation? Alexis's voice carried a sharpness that hadn't been there during our casual conversations. I don't know. He keeps mentioning names, clients, some woman's business accounts. He's been writing everything down, like he's preparing a report for someone. The silence stretched for 15 seconds, an eternity in a casual phone conversation. When Alexis spoke again, her mask had slipped completely. Emma, has David mentioned my name specifically? There it was. The question that revealed everything. Not concern for our friendship, not worry about my emotional state, but cold calculation about her own exposure. Not to me directly, but I heard him on a call with someone yesterday. Your name came up, and something about business partnerships and financial records. Listen, Emma, I think I might need to take a business trip. Sudden opportunity, very time-sensitive. I might be out of touch for a while. Of course. Do what you need to do. But Alexis wasn't going anywhere. Unknown to her, Richard's connections in the real estate world had already flagged her credit cards and bank accounts with every major travel booking system in the Southeast. Agent Martinez had obtained surveillance warrants that turned Alexis's digital footprint into a real-time tracking system. Every attempt to book flights was recorded. Every cash withdrawal was photographed. Every phone call to her network associates was intercepted and transcribed. The trap was working perfectly. Alexis was doing exactly what cornered criminals always do, making increasingly desperate moves that only provided more evidence of their guilt. She tried to liquidate her BMW yesterday, Richard reported during our third coordination call. The dealer got suspicious about a cash-only transaction and ran her plates through their fraud database. Guess whose financial flagging system popped up? The net was tightening around her with mathematical precision. Every escape route blocked, every asset monitored, every communication intercepted. But the most devastating part of our strategy wasn't the surveillance or the financial blocks. It was the psychological pressure of knowing her carefully constructed world was collapsing while being powerless to stop it. Alexis had spent her career making other people feel helpless. Now it was her turn. Strategic Solutions, LLC occupied a corner suite in a trendy midtown building, the kind of space designed to impress potential clients with its minimalist luxury and floor-to-ceiling windows. At 2 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon, it became the setting for the end of Alexis's criminal career. I arrived first, walking through the lobby with the confidence of someone who'd spent 2 weeks planning this moment down to the minute. The receptionist, a young woman who probably had no idea she worked for a criminal organization, smiled brightly as I approached. I'm here to see Alexis about the Henderson account consultation. Of course. She's expecting you. Conference room 3. No, she wasn't expecting me. But she was about to get the meeting of her lifetime. Alexis looked up from her laptop when I entered, her expression shifting from professional welcome to confusion to something approaching dread as she registered who was actually standing in her doorway. Emma, what are you doing here? How did you? Hello, Alexis. We need to talk. She recovered quickly, her professional mask sliding back into place with practiced ease. Emma, this is a surprise, but I'm actually in the middle of a client presentation prep. Maybe we could. The client meeting you're preparing for is, with me, about the Henderson account. You remember Mrs. Henderson, don't you? 83 years old, recently widowed, trusted my husband with her retirement savings. The color drained from Alexis's face, but she maintained her composure. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Mrs. Henderson's account that David skimmed $127,000 from to fund your business operations. The money that paid for your BMW, your downtown apartment, your designer wardrobe. Emma, you're clearly upset about something, but you're not making sense. The conference room door opened behind me. Agent Victoria Martinez stepped inside, her FBI credentials already visible, followed by 2 additional agents whose presence filled the room with federal authority. Actually, she's making perfect sense, Agent Martinez said, her voice carrying the weight of 3 years investigating financial crimes. Ms. Rodriguez, or should I call you by one of your other names? Alexis's professional mask finally cracked. I want a lawyer. Of course you do. But first, let me explain what we know about your operation. Agent Martinez spread photographs across the conference table like she was dealing cards. Each image represented a different victim, a different city, a different identity that Alexis had used to systematically destroy lives across 12 states. Romance fraud network spanning 4 years. 12 primary victims that we've identified so far, with total losses exceeding $2 million. Coordinated money laundering through shell businesses and offshore accounts. Identity theft, mail fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit organized financial crimes. Alexis stared at the evidence spread before her, her breathing becoming shallow and rapid. The woman who'd manipulated wealthy men with surgical precision was watching her world collapse in real time. The beauty of investigating professional criminals, Agent Martinez continued, is that they keep excellent records. Your encrypted communications with associates in Miami, Phoenix, and Las Vegas have been very informative. This is harassment. You can't just. Actually, we can. And we did. Your entire network has been under federal surveillance for 6 weeks, ever since Mr. Blackwood's financial records raised red flags in our ongoing romance fraud investigation. The lie was perfect. Alexis didn't need to know that our evidence had initiated the investigation. She just needed to believe her carefully constructed operation had been compromised from the inside. Your partner David chose cooperation over conspiracy charges, I said, watching her face cycle through disbelief, rage, and finally, desperate calculation. He's been very helpful in explaining how you recruited him, how you coordinated the embezzlement, how you laundered the stolen funds. He's lying. David and I never. Alexis Maria Rodriguez. Agent Martinez interrupted, reading from an official document. Also known as Alexandra Morgan, Lexi Patterson, and Maria Santos. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and organized financial crimes. As the handcuffs clicked into place around her wrists, Alexis finally looked at me with something approaching recognition. Not the fake friendship she'd performed for years, but acknowledgement of the intelligence she'd underestimated. You planned this, she whispered. Every detail, I confirmed. Information is power, remember? My grandma taught me that. The woman who destroyed lives for profit was finally facing the consequences of her choices. And for the first time in months, justice felt like more than just a word. The financial recovery operation unfolded like a carefully choreographed military campaign, with Agent Martinez's team tracing money flows across 3 countries and 8 states. Within 72 hours of Alexis's arrest, the scope of her criminal network became clear and staggering. 18 victims identified so far, Agent Martinez reported during our debriefing session. Total recovered assets approaching $1.8 million. Your husband's cooperation has been instrumental in locating the offshore accounts. David's detailed confession had provided the roadmap federal investigators needed to unravel 4 years of systematic fraud. Shell companies dissolved, revealing hidden bank accounts. Cryptocurrency wallets were traced and frozen. Real estate purchased with stolen money was seized and liquidated. Mrs. Henderson got her retirement savings back, all $127,000 plus interest. Mr. Williams received full restitution for the life insurance settlement David had redirected to fund Alexis's operation. The Patel family's college fund was restored completely, but the investigation revealed victims beyond David's client list. The romance fraud network had destroyed lives across the country, elderly widowers in Florida, successful businessmen in Colorado, even a retired teacher in Oregon who'd lost her pension to one of Alexis's associates. The average victim age was 61, Agent Martinez explained. These weren't naive teenagers falling for online scams. These were intelligent, successful people who got targeted by professionals who studied their vulnerabilities like predators stalking prey. Each recovered dollar represented more than financial restitution. It represented dignity restored, futures salvaged, trust in the justice system reinforced. My grandmother's $4 million remained untouched in its protected trust, exactly where my instincts had kept it despite months of David's manipulation. But more importantly, 8 other members of Alexis's network were arrested in coordinated raids across the country. The ripple effects of our investigation had dismantled an entire criminal enterprise that had been operating undetected for years. Sometimes justice arrived slowly, but when it finally came, it was thorough. The courtroom in the federal building downtown felt like the final stage of a play I'd been performing for months. Judge Catherine Morrison, known for her no-nonsense approach to financial crimes, reviewed the case files with a thoroughness that had made her one of Atlanta's most respected federal judges. David sat at the defendant's table in a wrinkled suit, looking like a shadow of the confident financial advisor who'd convinced dozens of elderly clients to trust him with their life savings. His cooperation had been complete. Bank records, email passwords, detailed confessions about every stolen dollar, but cooperation couldn't erase the damage he'd inflicted. "Mr. Thompson," Judge Morrison began, her voice carrying the weight of federal authority, "your embezzlement of client funds represents one of the most systematic breaches of fiduciary duty this court has seen. The victim's impact statements paint a picture of devastating financial and emotional harm inflicted on elderly citizens who trusted you with their most precious assets." The sentence was exactly what Agent Martinez had predicted: 5 years in federal prison, full restitution to all victims, and permanent prohibition from working in financial services. David would be 53 when he got out, starting over with nothing but the knowledge that his greed had destroyed multiple lives. But Alexis, or rather, Maria Santos, as her real identity had finally been revealed, faced consequences that matched the international scope of her criminal enterprise. 12 years federal prison, Judge Morrison announced, followed by immediate deportation to Colombia upon completion of sentence. The court finds that Ms. Santos entered the United States on fraudulent documentation and has operated an organized criminal network designed to exploit vulnerable American citizens. 12 years. The woman who'd been my maid of honor, who'd helped me pick out my wedding dress, who delivered that beautiful toast about eternal friendship, would spend the next 12 years in federal prison before being deported to a country she'd left 20 years ago. The romance fraud network she built was completely dismantled, 8 associates arrested, millions in assets seized, victims across 12 states finally receiving justice. Justice had been thorough, methodical, and absolutely devastating to the people who'd thought their intelligence made them untouchable. My divorce from David was finalized on a Tuesday morning in October, exactly 8 months after I discovered David and Alexis in our bedroom. I walked out of the courthouse as Emma Richardson again. The name I'd been born with, the name my grandmother had whispered when she told me stories about strong women who survived impossible circumstances. Emma Thompson had been a naive woman who trusted too easily and loved too blindly. Emma Richardson was someone entirely different, sharper, more analytical, infinitely more dangerous to anyone who might try to manipulate her again. My grandmother's $4 million remained safely protected in the trust account I'd never converted to joint ownership, despite months of David's expert manipulation. Every penny was still there. But more than the money, I'd inherited something else from grandmother, her estate in Aspen, Colorado. 40 acres of mountain wilderness surrounding a hand-built log home that had been in our family for 60 years. The place where grandmother had retreated after grandfather's death, where she'd spent her final decade writing, reading, and becoming the formidable woman who'd raised me to be suspicious of anyone who wanted something too badly. The move from Atlanta happened in November, when the Colorado mountains were already dusted with early snow and the aspens had turned brilliant gold. I packed my life into a U-Haul truck, taking only the things that belonged to me: books, photographs of real family, and the small collection of antiques grandmother had left specifically for me. Everything else, the furniture David and I had chosen together, the wedding photos that decorated every surface, the kitchen appliances we'd registered for with such hopeful enthusiasm, went to charity. I didn't want anything that carried memories of the woman I'd been when I believed in happily ever after. The first night in grandmother's house, I sat by the stone fireplace she built with her own hands and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete peace. No anxiety about David's late nights at the office. No nagging suspicions about Alexis's sudden success. No pressure to be anyone other than exactly who I was. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely alone. And instead of loneliness, I felt freedom. The mountains didn't care about my divorce or my betrayal or my broken trust. They just existed, eternal and unshakable, reminding me that some things endured long after human drama faded into irrelevance. I was ready to become one of those enduring things. 6 months later, I learned that Richard Blackwood was now divorced. His wife Margaret caught him cheating, and was awarded half of his property by the courts. I guess leopards never change their spots. The Aspen Community Center hosted financial fraud prevention workshops every third Thursday, and by my second month in Colorado, I'd volunteered to help coordinate them. What started as a way to meet neighbors became something much more significant when I realized how desperately people needed real, practical education about protecting themselves from the kind of sophisticated scams that had nearly destroyed my life. Most people think they're too smart to fall for romance fraud, I explained to a group of 20 local residents, many of them retired professionals with significant assets. But the criminals who run these operations aren't targeting stupidity. They're targeting human needs, connection, validation, the desire to be special to someone. The questions after my presentation revealed how widespread the problem was. A retired teacher whose online boyfriend had asked for help with a medical emergency. A widowed businessman who'd met a younger woman at a charity gala who seemed unusually interested in his investment portfolio. A divorcee whose new romantic interest kept steering conversations toward her inheritance from her deceased parents. Every story sounded familiar. Every victim described the same pattern of escalating requests, emotional manipulation, and increasing isolation from friends and family who might ask uncomfortable questions. But the workshop attendees weren't just potential victims. They were also potential allies in fighting back against the kind of organized fraud that had targeted me through David and Alexis. The phone call came on a Thursday evening in late March, while I was reading by the fireplace and watching snow fall across the mountain peaks. Agent Martinez's voice carried an excitement I'd rarely heard from federal law enforcement. "Emma, I have a proposition for you that's going to sound absolutely crazy, but hear me out completely before you say no." I set down my book, a biography of Frances Perkins, the first woman to serve in a presidential cabinet, and gave her my full attention. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division is launching a pilot program for specialized investigators with unconventional backgrounds. We're looking for people with real-world experience in fraud victimization, strong analytical skills, and the kind of personal investment that makes them absolutely relentless in pursuing financial criminals. Agent Martinez, I'm not law enforcement material. I'm a 31-year-old woman who got divorced because she was too trusting. Stop right there. You're a 31-year-old woman who uncovered a multi-state criminal conspiracy, coordinated with multiple victims to gather evidence, and personally dismantled an international romance fraud network. In 6 months, you've assisted with 12 cases and helped recover over $2 million in stolen assets. The numbers were staggering when she put them like that. I'd been so focused on individual cases that I hadn't realized the broader impact of my work. Emma, you don't just understand how these crimes work. You've lived through them and emerged stronger, smarter, and more dangerous to criminals than most 25-year-old agents with criminology degrees. What exactly are you proposing? Full federal agent training at Quantico. Specialized track for financial crimes, with focus on romance fraud, elder abuse, and organized financial exploitation. Starting salary of $78,000, plus relocation assistance, plus the opportunity to protect thousands of potential victims across the country. The offer was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. Me, a federal agent? 6 months ago, I'd been a betrayed wife who couldn't even recognize that her husband was stealing from his clients. Now the FBI wanted to train me to hunt down people who destroyed lives for profit. There's one more thing, Agent Martinez continued. The program specifically recruits people with personal experience being targeted by financial crimes. The theory is that victims who fight back and win develop insights that traditional law enforcement training can't replicate. How long do I have to decide? 2 weeks. But Emma, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone with your combination of analytical ability, personal motivation, and pure, stubborn determination to see justice done. You were born to do this work. After we hung up, I sat by the fire for hours, staring at the mountains and thinking about paths not taken, futures not imagined, and the woman I'd become through surviving the worst betrayal of my life. Some choices changed everything. This might be one of them. 1 week later, I'm sitting on grandmother's porch swing, the same one I'd moved from Georgia to Colorado, watching the sun set behind snow-capped peaks and thinking about the woman who'd lived in this house before me. Grandmother never told me much about her first 40 years, but I'd found her journals in the attic last month, and her story was remarkably similar to mine. Betrayed by a business partner who'd stolen her first husband's life insurance money. Left with nothing but her intelligence, her determination, and a burning desire to make sure no one else suffered what she'd endured. She'd spent the next 30 years becoming one of Colorado's most successful real estate investors, but more importantly, she'd become the kind of woman who could spot a liar from across a room and stop financial predators before they destroyed their targets. The FBI recruitment paperwork sits on the kitchen table where I left it 3/7 ago, still unsigned. Agent Martinez called twice to check in, but she stopped pressuring me for an answer. She understands that some decisions can't be rushed. A decision that could change everything about the next 20 years of my life. I could stay here, safe in this beautiful isolation, helping one victim at a time while living off grandmother's careful investments. Or I could accept Agent Martinez's offer and spend the rest of my working life hunting down people like David and Alexis, professional criminals who saw other people's trust as an opportunity for profit. Some choices change everything. This might be one of them. So what do you think I should do? Join the FBI or stay in my new peaceful life? Let me know in the comments and make sure you subscribe, because either way, this won't be my last story. If you want to hear what I decide and see more stories like this, hit subscribe and the bell icon. You won't want to miss what comes next.